Bruchim habayim. Welcome, everyone. My name is Dennis Waldman, often called Denny, and I will be your host this afternoon. And on behalf of the Zamir Chorale Foundation, it is my pleasure to wish you all a very happy Father's Day and Grandfather's Day. This afternoon, we have a Father's Day special because of our guests, extraordinary artists, extraordinary personalities. We have the Papa, Cantor Jack Mendelson, who you heard in the opening, and you will hear a little bit more about that opening a little bit later on, and the son, Cantor Daniel Mendelson, along with our moderator, Maestro Matthew Lazar. Now, I need not tell anyone that we're living in challenging and complicated times. Hence the topic of this afternoon, conversations about music in challenging times. But perhaps there is a secondary theme here, and that is the theme of mishpacha, family. And I say that on a day like today. And you know the old expression that we have in our tradition, Bli chaye mishpacha lo yibane am, which means without family, there can be no nation, there can be no people, there can be no community. And no one exemplifies that better than the Zamir family and the Mendelson family. And the mission statements says it all, namely, to enhance Jewish life through Jewish music. Now, for me, today is a personal pleasure because of my lifelong close relationship with Jack, Danny, and Mati. Many moons ago, we grew up together in Borough Park, on the streets of Borough Park, Yeshiva Eitz Chaim, and so forth. Now, some of the things that we did as kids, I will not share with you today. Some things are better left unsaid. But about music, well, Jewish music, so to speak, was our life, and it still is. Jack and I were the singers. We had the solos, we had the leads, both in the yeshiva and in the community, often accompanied by Mati. So we go back. And along comes Danny with his talent as the voice of this generation and the next generation. And here we are all together. And how delighted we are to wish a special Mazal Tov to Danny and Amanda, who had twin boys 2 years ago, and about two weeks ago, I should say, better than 2 years ago, 2 weeks ago. And an extended Mazal Tov to the Mendelson and Kleiman families. And the twin boys together with their 22-month-old son. Good luck with those nighttime feedings and with the arias that you no doubt will be getting from them in stereo. A word or two about our participants. Cantor Jacob Mendelson. Growing up in Brooklyn, Jack witnessed part of the golden age of Chazanut. Now is both an international performer and one of the leading cantorial masters of today. He is passing on his art to a new generation. For over 35 years, he has taught at the Hebrew Union College School of Sacred Music, as well as the H.L. Miller Cantorial School at the Jewish Theological Seminary. In a review of the documentary film A Cantor's Tale, which chronicles his life, the New York Times hailed him as a voice that heralds a culture. In short, Jack is one of the most influential and respected figures in the American cantorate. And on a personal level, Jack, I remember our stickball days in the schoolyard, and I forgive you at the age of 11 when you almost broke my nose in Johnny on the Pony. I still love you. Cantor Daniel Mendelson. Danny has served Congregation B'nai Shalom Beth David in Rockville Center since 2012 with distinction, and is soon joining the clergy team at the prestigious congregation Kol Ami in White Plains. As the son of two distinguished Westchester cantors, Danny was introduced to Jewish music and opera from a young age. Danny has performed all over the United States and in Europe. For the past 2 summers, he has been honored to sing the national anthem at Citi Field and at Madison Square Garden. Recently, his own musical setting was selected in a nationwide contest to compose a melody for the official Jewish prayer for the United States Armed Forces. This song of service has been offered at congregations around the country. And on a personal note, Danny, when I first heard you sing as a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, you blew me away. And now you're blowing us all away. Kol hakavod. Maestro Matthew Lazar. Mati is the founder and director of the Zamir Choral Foundation, who has created the renaissance of Jewish choral music in North America. As conductor of the Zamir Chorale, founder of the North American Jewish Choral Festival, Hazamir, the International Jewish Teen Choir, and Zamir Noded, he has created and promoted trans-denominational, transgenerational, and trans-political Jewish musical communities for over 40 years. He has conducted choral and choral orchestra Jewish-themed concerts across the United States and Israel, and has conducted the great cantors of this generation. He was a co-founder of Teku, the first American Hebrew folk rock group. And off the resume, Mati, you're one of the few people after all these years that not only are you a first-class mensch, but you make me think, you make me feel, and you make me laugh. One word of housekeeping before we get into our program. You know, there are some people who don't like other people's opinions and questions and thoughts. There was the difficult Jewish movie mogul, Samuel Goldwyn, who actually once said to his staff, "When I want your opinion, I'll remove the duct tape." Well, we at Zamir want your input and we want your questions, but please remember to put your questions in the chat stream. That's important. So, our program today, conversations about Jewish music in challenging times. And here now, as we fasten our seatbelt for a wonderful educational musical ride, I turn it over to our moderator, Mati Lazar. Mati?
Thank you so much, Denny. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Danny. And thank all of you for joining us today on Father's Day for this wonderful program. As I was listening, Jackie, to that Yom HaShabbos that you and I recorded with the Western Wind Vocal Ensemble with Bill Zukov singing that beautiful alto solo, I was transported back to Borough Park. I was transported back to Temple Bethel, Moshe Kusevitsky and Benny Friedman and his double symphonic choir, whatever that means. And as I was listening, I could still feel my father's presence. And I know that you have the same experience. So I'd like to ask you, starting Jackie with you, what is it about music that allows us to feel so many different complex emotions just by listening to it?
Well, I think the human voice is just by its nature is comforting. It's the first thing we hear when we're born, and it evokes memory. So, especially in these times, singing is so important. And it's difficult to hear choral sounds in these times, but if you go the extra mile and work very hard, there is a way to do it, and I know, Mati, you have, in using the technology that is currently available. When I hear a choir sing, it's very, very special. And what you said about the Yom HaShabbos evoked so many memories. I have a vision of Benny Friedman, the conductor, and the Oila Shabbos, that was it. He used to do it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, and he would conduct, and the kids who would sing the solo were in size order. So he'd look up for the first one and further down and down. Then he would get on his knees to conduct the last one. I'll never forget that.
Danny, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I'll just say that, you know, music unlocks the imagination, the human imagination, in a way that nothing else can. Dick Clark famously said, music is the soundtrack to our lives. Well, all of us, every human being, is the conductor and composer of that soundtrack. And no pandemic can take that away from us, ever. And so I just wanted to put that out there with what all of us have been going through for the last 3.5 months. But hearing that with Yom HaShabbat, I mean, that stirred me. I mean, that was brought back so many memories of being in shul, hearing my dad teach me, as he taught everyone who heard him in shul. So I'm grateful to have just heard that now with all of you.
This is for both of you or either of you. I want to dig a little deeper about what is it about music making, about the music, whether it's just the music or music and text, that makes it so irresistible, that takes over our spirit and takes over our lives and brings us into what on the inside we call music time. It's usually a combination of the melody or the harmony or the rhythm or the tempo. Do you care to either of you weigh in on which of those aspects is the driving force when you're performing or listening?
Well, when you said the word text, that hit the bullseye for me. We are taught as chazanim that the text is everything. And what a good chazan does is bring the text to the fore, explain the text, does musical midrash with the text so that the people would understand it. Way back when before the printing press, they didn't have sidurim, so they depended on the chazan to bring the text to them in the form of musical midrash. Just the way they would sing, the chazan would sing the words, the people would understand what the words mean. That to me is the most exciting thing as a chazan.
Danny, you do such a wide variety of music, and you are also a composer. So how does that, and you're an astute listener. So as a filmmaker, I know that you often are choosing certain kinds of music to accompany the films that you make. How does that affect the choices you make, whether it's the tempo, elevator music and music in department stores is regularly clocked at 92 beats to the minute, or 120 if they're trying to speed you up and get you out of the restaurant. But what is it about those things that appeals to you, or that is in your toolkit that you like to manipulate and use?
Well, I'm always attracted to what's personal, and music. There's nothing more personal than music, and it's personal. It goes inside your mind. As long as I can remember, I've had a soundtrack pulsating all around me, and in good times and in bad, trials and tribulations. And it's not as simple as happy music when I'm feeling good, and thumping, war music when I'm feeling, like chaotic. It's a language all its own, and I try to imagine where I am emotionally, and how the music sort of accompanies my emotions when I'm working on a film or a documentary, or when I'm composing Jewish liturgical music, which has been something I've been doing for the last couple of years. And I can tell you, I've never really been impacted quite so powerfully as a musician, as a musical person, than when I have endeavored to compose this kind of music. There's nothing quite like it. And my dad was talking about the text and prayer and how it becomes poetry. That's how I feel. I mean, I think music asks questions, can answer questions. It can ask questions that don't really have an answer. It can linger with you. It can stay with you. And it's something that we all have. It can't be taken away from us. I've spent a lot of time listening to music and just listening to where where I'm at emotionally, and there's nothing else that can really do that. It's one of the reasons I'm so happy you're doing these sessions, because we should step away from it and look at it and look at how special it is to have music. And I'm so grateful to be involved in something like this, where we can step away from it and experience it and appreciate it, and not just have it be our everyday lives. It's we're getting to sort of examine it, and that's a blessing.
We are examining it, I think, from the realm of missing it. And when one of the Mashiachs comes and we're able to make music again live without any distraction, without any parameters, I'm hoping that everyone will remember that first moment of Shehecheyanu, that everyone will surely feel and will surely know. But a week later, will we fall back into the, well, okay, this is what we do, instead of the miracle that you just described. I want to ask both of you, Jackie, let's start with you. Since you're both experts in not just one kind of music, you both sing sacred music in sacred spaces, secular music in secular spaces, and sometimes secular music in sacred spaces, and all the different permutations. So Jackie, what does it feel for you when you're singing an operatic role, and how do you experience that as opposed to being on the bima and singing a cantorial classic?
Well, the opera for me is inhabiting a character as opposed to inhabiting a text. What I do with chazonis. So there's more worrying, inner worrying. There's so many things a singer thinks about before letting out a tone. And the idea is not to do that, certainly not to show to do that. But you think about how you look, you think about the timbre. Will the next high note be in the right pocket? Oh my God, the high note is coming, I've got to get ready for it. So what? It's those are the range of things that one feels. And you do feel when you're davening. You do worry about your voice, but you try so hard to get away from that. And what you do is you practice and practice until it's ready to go, so that in the moment of prayer, you can pray and you can let yourself swim in the emotional moment.
Jackie, I want to follow up with you, since I know that you've davened facing the ark and facing the congregation. And you have such a large and powerful personality that even with your back towards the congregation, you can make quite an impact. Does it feel different to you when you're davening towards the crowd, or when your back is to the crowd and you're facing the Aron Kodesh, the ark?
Well, I'd have to divide it into two different times. In the early days of my career, it was a distraction to look at the audience, but as congregational singing became more prominent in our services and more important, I needed to see them. It wasn't enough for me to turn my back and just offer a hand, for them. I needed to see them. And I got to the point where it's not a distraction. It's a unifying force. I feel that we're together. And if I can nod at them and give them permission to sing with me, then that's what I want to do.
Great answer. Danny, care to add?
Yeah, it's really true that as a singer, it's impossible not to be insecure and think about, where your voice is at, where your body is at, what your voice will allow you to do, if you can make those notes, if you can keep the clarity in your voice that you want, if you sort of go into every chess move, every permutation of every move, and you just get lost in it. And that stays with me, I know, as a singer, almost always, certainly in an operatic sense, in a rock and roll sense, in any kind of secular Broadway performative sense. The performance takes over, and I try to get lost in the character. But in Chazanut and in Jewish music as a whole, when I'm on the bima, it doesn't just, it's a struggle. It's a struggle, but there is an ability for me. I know I have access to let go of that, because what I'm doing when I'm doing it at my best is I'm talking to God, and I'm sharing with God on behalf of the congregation and with the congregation, depending on what I'm doing as a cantor. And there's really nothing that can compare to that spiritually. So that's what makes this calling so special. And I tried to run away from it for a while, but it caught me, and I'm embracing it.
Beautifully said, Danny. You're touching on something that I'm always interested in, because as a conductor and as a pianist, I often think about these things, often when they're happening, and I have to distract myself and get back to the main job. And that is, both of you have tremendous synergy when you're performing or davening. And it's palpable. It's one of the reasons that people want to hear you, that they come to hear you, because they know that not only will they be getting quote unquote a performance, but they're getting your soul unbound. What does that synergy feel like? Danny, let's start with you.
It's really, I know that I'm in the right spot if I feel that connection, if I feel it all the way down to my feet, that I'm just grounded in that moment. It's what actors, I think, try to do. They try to drop into the role. But on the bima, it's similar. But I know that when I'm dropped into the role, it's not a role. It's just, it's life. You feel it. It's existential, in a way that nothing else can be. And so that's what I always strive for. You strive to be connected to what you're doing. I think we all do that in every realm of our lives. But as a singer, it's such a vulnerable. This is our instrument. Our bodies carry our instrument, and you feel that in a way that's almost indescribable. But I know that I'm closer to where I want to be, where when I feel the heaviness in the soles of my feet, that I'm sort of punched into the ground, and I can't move anywhere. I don't want to move. And that's good. I can't, even if I wanted to.
Sounds like a very grounded experience that you just described. Give us a very short snippet of the difference of what it feels like when you're singing maybe for 500 people in a shul and halavai 50,000 people in Citi Field. How do you experience that tension, and much less deal with the echo often when you're singing a national anthem in a huge arena?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, those headphones, they don't give you much. They don't give you much. I found that I had to kind of pretend it wasn't happening. I'm a lifelong Mets fan. I'm sorry, Denny. I'm so sorry. And I just, when I'm at Citi Field, I mean, nothing will compare to Shea Stadium, that feeling that you get. It was hard for me not to think about that first smell of hot dogs and the field and the grass, and to not get lost in all of that. There's Michael Bolton had the words of the national anthem written on his hand when he sang at the Super Bowl. There's a reason. You just know when you're in that kind of environment, that distractions are everywhere. And I just found that when I sort of closed my eyes without actually literally closing my eyes, and just sort of focused in on whatever was in front of me, and just zeroed in on that sort of the blur of the crowd, focused on the blur of the crowd. That's actually what I did. And that allowed me to relax. And once I got the first couple of phrases out, I kind of knew I was in a good position, and I just was able to let it ride.
Jackie, I've been on the bima with you many times and on stage with you many times. And there's that certain electricity that you generate in both those spaces. How do you feel it? Do you feel your feet grounded on the stage or on the bima the way Danny just described? Or what's the tip off for you that you're in it and you're there?
It's really a hard question. When I hear the introduction, I go to another place. And it makes no difference if it's 50 people or 5,000 people. I hear the introduction, I sing the first note, and the butterflies are gone, and then I can emote. This business about grounding that Danny was saying so eloquently before, it reminded me of an experience that I had on the bima back in my 20s when I was the chazan of the Conservative Synagogue of Riverdale in the 60s. It was a Friday night service. I'll never forget it. I was singing the Eloheinu Ritzeh, and I was singing the text, B'taher libeinu liovdecha b'amet, purify our hearts to serve you in peace. And the composer was Israel Alter, and those of you who know the piece, that is a very, very high passage, and it keeps repeating, high G followed by an A G followed by an A. The musicians know what I'm talking about here. And I got into some sort of a zone with the text that this tessitura didn't bother me. In the rehearsals, it bothered me terribly. But in the moment of davening, it didn't bother me. I went into a place and my voice got very, very small to my ear. Small, small, until it was like a pin. It was like a pin head coming out. And then in my body, this will sound crazy, my body, during that little tiny sound, my body expanded to the wall to the right and the wall to the left. And I was in a state of ecstasy, and I've been chasing that the rest of my life, and I never got it. I've never found it again. But it was the text of V'taher libeinu and the music of Israel Alter and coming together that brought me to that place.
I'd like what you just said at the very end. It was a beautiful expression of the entire experience that we're all searching for. But when the combination of the text and the music and letting go and let them both unifying the brain, the part of the brain that can process music and the part of the brain, the other part of the brain that's processing text, and you have them both happening simultaneously, it's a beautiful thing to listen to as a listener, because then you can follow whatever thoughts you have and have been inspired by that great moment. And as a performer, you relish those moments, but you know you can't think about it too much longer. You might just be able to feel it, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to continue and deliver it. So thanks for articulating that part of that special, special moment that I think everyone can have at different parts in their lives, not just performers. Now I want to ask you something about fathers and sons and teachers and students and or family members in general. Many musicians, whether they're singers or instrumentalists, chazanim, cantors, have often been taught not only by their teachers, but often have learned their craft from either their fathers or their mothers or other family members. And first I'd like to ask you, Jackie, how did you come to this place in the cantorate and your place in the operatic world? Who were your influences?
Well, it started at the home. My father's father, my Zeta, Harav Yaakov Ben Sion HaKohen, was born in Riga and came to America, was in Newark, was a musician, but not a formal musician. He didn't read music, and he wrote music in his head, and we have family Zemirot. And the Zemirot have the elements of Nusach in them, and the elements of Chazanut in them. And the family sang them every Friday night. In the middle of a particular one, my father would point to my sister Betty, take over here, to my brother Saul, take over here, he'd point to me. And I learned the Chazanas moves when I was 2 years old, and I heard it. I didn't know it was hard. No one told me it was hard, so I just did it. And then when I was 11 years old, I was sent to I should back up a little bit. My mother had a beautiful voice, and my father sang in tune, but he had a gruff voice, and they would sing duets. They'd go to hear Koussevitzky Shabbat morning, and then 2:30 when shul ended, we went back home and had lunch. During lunch, they would sing in duet form what they had heard that morning in shul. One favorite was Motai Timloch B'Tzion, Mosai Timloch B'Tzion. And I could just see them, Tibby and Louie, singing this duet. Mosai Timloch, Timloch B'Tzion. Come on, Louie. Bekorov B'Yameinu. My mother, Leo, that was her krecht. Leo Lam Voet. Boy, that would influence anybody. You know, what else was I going to become but a chazan, you know?
Boys, it's me again. Let me stick my 2 cents in, and I apologize because when such good stuff is going on in this conversation, there is never a good time to interrupt, but we want to give an opportunity to our viewers to get their 2 cents in with their questions. So it seems to be a recurring question that's coming in several forms, so I'll just articulate it and then you can decide who wants to deal with it. Can you balance formal recitatives and choral pieces, old and new, with congregational singing? Is that doable?
I'm afraid
Dan,
one first, Dad. Yeah, go for it, Dad. I'll work off of you.
Okay. Yeah, if you're, well, I'll just say it. If you've got the talent, and if you're smart about it, you can certainly sing a formal recitative. One good idea would be to sing something in a Rosenblatt type of a form, where at the end of the recitative, he always had a little song at the end that everyone could sing along with. But they will listen to that recitative if it's done really, really well. There's nothing worse than bad chazanas. That's it. There's nothing worse than that. But if chazanas is done beautifully, they'll get it. They'll understand it. And if you do a piece of chazanut, then the congregational songs after that will be more interesting to them. If you just do congregational, that's boring. You switch it up with a little. See, chazanut has no meter. There's no rhythm to chazanut. So you do a rhythmic piece with the congregation, another one, then you do a piece of chazanut. So you have the chiaroscuro. You don't just have light, you have light and dark. You have, and then after the piece, go back to the congregational song, and the congregational song will sound even better because you're playing off of something else. So I guess that's how I did it.
Before you continue, Danny, it was my pleasure to work with Jackie at Temple Israel Center, and he had a phenomenal ability to not only have the congregation sing, but have the congregation become a choir. We would, when I was, at least in those Shabbatot, I was there, and we were allowed to do a complex kind of a service. Jackie would train the congregation to sing chords. So it wasn't just singing a melody and maybe an occasional thirds, but actual chords, which of course, that's the typological way. They have the chazan with a bass and his son, the alto, three-part music. That's the goal, or was the goal. Sorry, Danny, if I stepped on you.
No, no. And it reminds me of how I got introduced to choral music as a very, very, very young boy. I must have been 3 or 2. And my dad would go harmony, and my mom would go harmony, and I would go harmony, and then I would interrupt myself with uproarious laughter because I was electrified by how it was so exciting to know that I was singing with my parents in harmony, and we were all singing individually at the same time. We were separate and we were together. And it was so exciting that all I could do was laugh. You know, I felt like Jimmy Fallon breaking up in the middle of a Saturday Night Live sketch, as he did on every sketch he appeared in his whole career at Saturday Night Live. I just lost it. But I think that choral music it's so important, and choral music to be incorporated into congregational music and recitative and chazanut, and like what my dad was talking about. I think it's so true that when you offer a congregation a recitative, a piece, a moment to listen, it makes their eagerness to participate even more intense, and they appreciate what they're hearing. But when you give them the opportunity, so because it goes both ways, if it's recitative after recitative after recitative, that can be problematic too. It is. You need to weave in and out. You need to put it all together. You need to edit all the different ingredients so that it feels like a complete experience. Too much of any one thing is too much. And that speaks to me, and I've learned from him, and I've learned from my mom in terms of stirring the pot with all the different ingredients and keeping that consistent throughout an entire service.
You know, I want to interject a Father's Day question to both of you, to you, Jack, and to you, Danny. Obviously, you've performed with other singers in a concert at a function, but even more so, the two of you have performed together. And I remember, and I've heard you with Danny and Jack perform together on many occasions, and one particular occasion was at the Zamir Festival over the summer where you performed together. And I noticed whenever you sing, Jack and Danny, together, you not only love each other, but you actually like each other, admire each other, and respect each other. When you're singing with other singers, and you and Jack and Danny, when you're singing together at a function, is there such a thing as constructive competition where you bring out the best in each other?
You bet. You bet. I mean, I've always loved singing with people that have really something to say, because it just ups my game. And with Danny, I mean, sometimes I remember a concert that we did in January. Well, yeah, it was around Shabbat Shira, and we would each sing a number, and then we would do duets, each singing a duet. There was one spectacular number that Danny sang, and then it was time for the duet. And I was afraid to get back on the bima, but I managed, and I enjoyed it. I just enjoyed it, you know. But not just because he's my son, and I do enjoy it because he's my son, but I enjoyed it on a professional level. Because if somebody is, and I'll say it, if somebody's better than you, and he is in many ways, I never had certain things in my voice that Danny has. Not to belittle what I brought to the table, and it's fascinating. I find myself fascinated with him, and also he brings me along, and enjoying the moment. You know, I just he ups my game.
Can I just say
both
that?
your-
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead, Danny.
I just have to say, on a personal note, Dad, that's cosmetics. The high notes, the dreidelach, it's great, but it's cosmetics. And you tell the story, and I am still learning from you how to properly tell the story. And no one tells it better than you. No one.
That's the most beautiful Father's Day gift. You should print it on a card and send it, Danny.
Mati, you from the sidelines, you may have a picture that's the same as mine. Or what have you noticed about not only Jack and Danny, but other singers who are singing together who also bring out the best in each other? What have you noticed?
It's a very good question. Sometimes it's a beautiful experience when they bring it out of love. Other times you have singers who really hate each other and they're singing on stage, and they're really, it's a game of one-upsmanship. And as a conductor, you just kind of try to maintain calm in the universe that you're inhabiting, because it's really about the two of them, or sometimes the three of them. It's easier when it's not the same voice part. Very often you have two tenors in the same room, and it could be thermonuclear war. But with Jackie and Danny, I love being in the middle of that love fest. And when it's right, it's definitely right. And I know, Danny, that you learned so much, just as Jackie imbibed those little dreidlach growing up. You, of course, learned all those little dreidlach. And I know there are many father cantors who teach their sons the coloratura by going over it very slowly and then speeding it up. But in your case, I'm pretty sure that wasn't the case, that you were able to get it up to speed. And so I'd like, if you don't mind, Jackie, if you're up to it, I'd like you to do a little bit of this dueling, friendly dueling, just a quick little nugget of chazonic improvisation, just a little bit of one lick, and then maybe Danny, you can respond either in imitation, maybe be your own voice, which is so close to your father's, or maybe imitate even your father's voice, and respond either exactly or whichever way that would be stylistically good for you. I've heard you guys do this by being a guest in your home, so I know it's a phenomenal experience, and that's one of my pleasures in these events, to share the wonderful moments in my life with all of you out there.
Oh boy.
You
You ready, Danny?
Go
Shall
ahead,
I go
Jack.
first?
That's exactly what I was going to do.
Bravo.
Hey,
Bravo.
let's reverse that now. Danny, you start.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, boy, 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 I give up.
Bravo, bravo. I remember once, Jack, you'll remember this, and no names. Jack and I went to a Chazanische concert many, many years ago. There were about 8 or 9 Chazanim. Jack, you'll know this in a second. And one of the Chazanim came off afterwards, and we expected some profound comment from him about his experience. And he said, I won. I don't know we never know what that meant. I won. Like it was a tournament, So, it's a pleasure to hear people who actually get it and get the big picture and enjoy each other's company and look for the higher for the higher goals of what this is all about. I think
Denny,
Zman.
I want to interrupt only to say that the reason he said he won is because every other time he lost.
You know, it's a fascinating comment, but Jack and I just fell down because you can't respond to something like that. And we said, congratulations. And, you know, I don't know what you won, but it's always nice to speak to the winner. Higi Azman, it's the time now where we have to start closing our program. And look, I told you before, the three of us, the four of us go back a long time. And it pains me to give you a compliment, all of you. Pains me, but I have no choice. I want to thank you. We all want to thank you on behalf of the Zamir Choral Foundation for your insights and for your commitment and for your passion. A job well done by all of you. And I want to say to our viewers, if you like what you hear and you want to continue to support Zamir, and on this special day would like to make a financial gesture, please visit the website, and we thank you for being there for us. To Jack and Danny and Mati, in addition to thanking you, I want to leave you with the Sephardic statement, which is, Tisku l'shanim rabot. May the three of you have the years, indeed, have the years to continue to create and perform beautiful, beautiful music. And may we all be privileged to share those experiences with you. Now, in a moment, you heard the father before, and Jack with the Yom HaShabbos. In a moment, you're going to Kvel and hear Danny with the Moshe Osher version of Chad Gadya. But on behalf of the Zamir Choral Foundation, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining this afternoon. And of course, to wish you a very happy Father's Day and Grandfather's Day. Stay safe and lehitraot.
Chad Gadya, Chad Gadya, Chad Gadya, Chad Gadya. Zabinabo, 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 Jesus, Chad Gadya, Chad Gadya. Zabinabo, Jesus, Chad Gadya, Chad Gadya, Chad Gadya, Chad Gadya. Yasishun aleyach lani Gadya, Zabinabo, 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 Jesus, everybody.
Well, Danny, you won that one. You're the winner.
He beat him.
Vincero.
Well, Vincero is only a B. You hit that D in a Hashem kind of moment.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Just awesome. Awesome. That was great. How do you feel, Jackie?
I feel wonderful listening to you and my son is the greatest.
Come on. Three of us made, I think, a good impact.
I thought
Danny,
it was, yeah.
Danny, thanks so much for everything you're doing and everything you did. And those Borough Park memories really come back pretty strongly. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Jackie, what was that song you sang in Eitz Chaim for that talent show?
Pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile. That's Denny and I. And then
Make it to the chart. That in 1950, whatever. You know, I have to say to the three of you that it's about time I got nachas from you. You live long enough, and occasionally you get something good comes out of you. Wait long enough. Thank God. Thank God. It was it.
And Denny, I say to you, thanks for the tuna fish. Denny's mother made the greatest tuna fish in history. And my parents had a deli, so I'd come to yeshiva, I'd come with a corned beef sandwich. And I'd switch with Denny. He'd give me the tuna fish, I'd give him the corned beef.
That's it.
What a world of difference between 51st Street and 55th Street.
Oh my God.
Yes, right.
You don't have a passport to get into a Jack store.
What was the name of the tenor and Ben? What is Double Symphonic?
Saul Lieber. Saul
Lieber
Lieber was the tenor in Benny Friedman's choir. Correct.
Is he the one who asked Benny the famous question?
No, that was Mel, who was a singer in the Met chorus, and he told Benny that he was in the wrong key, and Benny said, "Don't be so technical."
He wasn't so much of a musician, Benny, but he gave a great hum, without a doubt.
There was another experience I remember where, you know, we had a lot of different mimkomchas, must have been 4 or 5 of them. And very often we'd be singing different pieces at the same time, but there wasn't a coordination. And Benny would say to us, "It's okay as long as you end off okay," because that's what people remember. Okay, he didn't have a problem. They weren't even singing the same piece. As long as we ended well, that's what people remember.
Yes.
That was his line.
Yeah, but by the time you guys got to Musaf, it was already 12:30, 1 o'clock.
That's true.
I mean,
That's very true. I used to get there 8 o'clock or 8:15 in the morning and come home like 3 in the afternoon. I mean, it was like it was endless. So
if you have Yom HaShabbos alone was 4 minutes. Wow. No.
Yeah.
But people stuck around, and as you know, when I was going to that shul, people were thrilled. Even Moshe was davening once a month on Mevachim Chodesh or some other special Shabbos. So if you didn't get it that Shabbos, you had to wait another 2 months before you got a chance to hear Moshe.
Yeah.
And so people did, and they were happy to wait until 2:30. I remember giving up my punch bowl games on those Shabbos.
Right.
well, there was also another aspect, Mati. You know, in that shul you had the great Moshe, who was my chazan, and as a kid I didn't realize who Moshe Kozovitsky was. And you had almost 2,000 people in this congregation, and you couldn't open up a window in June and July and August. And if somebody opened a window in Cincinnati, Moshe would feel it. So you would sit there till 2 o'clock in this furnace, and yet nobody moved. Nobody moved.
I seem to remember a Shabbos. He was in the middle of Chazaras. He was in the middle of Shmona Esrei, and he turned around over his left shoulder and said, "Close the window." And people were terrified of moving.
Well, that's not the real story. The real story was you're almost there, because I was in the choir. What he said was, and here's the funny part, because Benny Friedman didn't hear everything, but he was, like you said, a great hummer and a great accompanist. Everything that Moshe did, he would have a hum for. And what the exact line was, "Close the windows, it's not so hot." And then he gave a hum. That was funny. then he hummed that line as an accompaniment, as a backup.
My recollection is the window was near where Dad and I sat. He said one further thing. He said, "You want I should catch a cold?"
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I was waiting for that.
Right. That was true.
Yes.
Hi,
I've heard that story many times.
Hi, Fred.
Hey, Danny.
Hi, darling. Mazel tov.
Can I just say what's
beautiful.
amazing to me is just listening to you guys talk. So much of my life has been catching the glimpse that you guys all caught of the last wave of the golden age of Chazanut. You know, and I've had to fill in the story as a filmmaker, you know, in my own imaginations of what it really was like, and it's impacted me enough that I'm where I am today. But you know, I very few things bring me as much pleasure as just listening to you guys talk about this. It's a remarkable time that you experienced and that you caught the last wave of, and I've been riding that wave my whole life.
You know, I have to add to that, Danny. Thank you for that comment. We were in the right place at the right time, I guess. But, you know, I have to say a word on this Father's Day about our collective fathers. Mati and Jack's father and my father, they had incredible ears. Incredible. They were very musical. I mean, Mati's father was extraordinarily musical, but all of our three fathers had great ears and had a tremendous influence on all of us. And it's important to take that into consideration on Father's Day. They were phenomenal. It's not that our mothers weren't involved, but our fathers really had, you know, a different type of an approach. And remember, in Orthodox shuls, they were able to sit with us, and they were able to go with us in places where women couldn't go. So they had an extraordinary influence on us. Mati, I don't know how you feel.
No, that's exactly right. You made me think of where I used to sit in Bethel with my father. And he had a very, I was always amazed, especially when I was like 4 or 5 years old. And he would be able to predict at the end of when we put back the Torah, whether Moshe was going to sing the Hashivenu with a high C at the end, that he'd kiss the parochet and turn around and kill everyone who wasn't already dead and do Chias HaMesim for those who were. It's an unforgettable moment, but my father knew from the Nusach and from how casually or seriously Moshe was approaching the text at the end of that pasuk to know what was going to happen. It was really an amazing experience. And I want to add one thing about my father, since it is Father's Day. I'm not sure that either of you or all three of you or any of you really know that my father conducted a shul choir for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur for my uncle, my late uncle, Dave Marillis, who was a chazan in Seagate. And I was the Aresh's boy. And my father I still have his machzor with what to do and where to hum and where to save the chazan. So I learned that skill from him as well by just being in the choir and showing up late to shul. Because my father had Rahmanis in me, I didn't have to be there at 8:30. I could come later. But it was a beautiful moment and a beautiful education. Thanks for giving me that setup, Danny.
I did know that, Mati. I happen to know that. And also, I didn't know you were going to select the Machtenberg piece. And it's, you know, these are names that you don't appreciate as a kid. I remember when I used to go to the rehearsals with Moshe. We had to go once, twice a week to go to rehearsals with him. And again, I was a kid. I didn't know who Moshe Kozovisky was then. I thought every shul had 2,000 seats, and every shul had Moshe Kozovisky. Doesn't everybody in America? I didn't know what I had. And Machtenberg used to come to our rehearsals. So I met him a number of times as a kid. I saw these people. But I didn't realize their importance until I got older, of where I was and what gifts I had and what I was introduced to. And also, my uncle was also a famous chazan, Label Waldman, and that was a different relationship because chazanim, he was my uncle, so I could get around with him and be kibbutz. It was my uncle. Yet when we sang together, it was all business. There was no nonsense. So and he used to say to me, "Don't worry, everything will be fine, but don't make a mistake." And yet afterwards, we would have a great time. So, you know, you live with these personalities, and they're different. We're all different in our formal line. When we're serious about what we're doing, we're all different people.
You know, the funny thing about what you said, that you thought everybody had a 2,000-seat shul and everyone had a Kusavitsky. But the fact is that a block and a half away from Moshe was another David who also sang.
Oh, I'm glad you said that.
Such a great musician.
Oh, he was amazing. What a beautiful man.
What an unbelievable mensch who went through
Oh,
personal tragedy in Befar Hesia in public in such an elegant way. And those Shabbosim when Moshe wasn't davening, my father and I would go to Temple Emmanuel, and we'd end up, of course, it was mixed seating, we'd end up sitting in the balcony. And for the first time in my life, I had an Orthodox woman's perspective of the service, because I was sitting up there with a better view of the choir, by the way.
Yeah, their choir leader in Temple Emmanuel was Herman Zalis, an interesting choir leader. And I would go back and forth emotional. I mean, Monty, you, Jack, and I, we had an amazing experience growing up there. But it got a chance for me, and I was a Vimale boy, so I got a chance to work with every chazan in that era and every choir in that era on weekends. So you get a lot of perspectives that you don't appreciate until you get older. So I'm very appreciative.
Let's get a sense of the financial difference between the 50s and now. How much did you get as a Vimale boy?
Well, that's very interesting. $10 was a lot of money. So I used to get between $5 and $10, but I sang other stuff also. I didn't only sing Vimale. And also I used to sing bar mitzvahs. There was a song in Yiddish, in Yiddish, that I had to learn, that I did for various chazanim.
You sang it at your own bar mitzvah with Leibele.
Oh, yeah, you remember? Yeah, my uncle sang that.
And I remember there was a stairwell, and one of you was up the stair, one of you was down the stairwell. And
by the way, Jack, Ganshoff did it, and so did Neil's father. I sang with all of them those things. They had different formats, and I sang different pieces for them. But yeah, I got $5, but my uncle gave me a lot more. He's my uncle.
Yeah, I only did 2 or 3 Vimales, and I remember getting $5.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did one Vimale that I screwed up, and I was hoarse, and it was terrible, and they took mercy on me, and they sent me a basketball. Yeah. To make me feel better.
That wasn't with Sterner, was it, Jackie?
No. It was like I was an individual. My brother just would get me to Vimale. Well, after that one, he didn't get me anymore.
By the way, everybody, people may not know, what is a Vimale boy? A Vimale boy after World War II was this young alto who would wear an outfit like a chazan's outfit with a chazan's hat, and would walk down the aisle after the bride and groom was already in, and he would bless them with Vimale Mishalotena B'midatova Yishuv Rachamim. In Ashkenazit, of course, he would raise his hands after the words B'midatova and bless them, and the whole thing, either by yourself or with a choir. And that was a big thing. And there were other songs that also I sang at these things. And so I became a Vimale boy. And in the winter, I could do 3-4 weddings on a weekend. So it helped me make some money, which we needed.
Yeah. The 3 Vimales that I did were followed by I Love You Truly later in the ceremony.
I Love You Truly and Because were big songs. Yep.
You don't have that. I don't remember the last time. Danny, you never did Vimale, did you?
No, I didn't make it to the Vimale stage.
Oh, that was gone by the time Danny was.
Yeah,
that was gone already.
Jackie, since you remember Denny's bar mitzvah, was there a family message that was being given to Denny that kabed et avicha v'esimecha, have respect for your parents?
Well, Denny's father was a very funny guy. He was he was like one of us. We didn't think of him as Denny's father. He was like one of us. We would kid around with him, and he would say, "Oh, it's time for Minka. I got to get the shul from Minka." And he would we'd go to Denny's on Shabbos afternoon, and he would talk about the famous boxing matches and about all kinds of, and he would paint the picture of what it was like, and before the Depression, all that. He was a great storyteller, and then he knew the capitals of every city in the world, and he would.
Yes, I was a very exciting young man, very charismatic. I have to tell you something.
You were always funny, Denny.
Sometimes things happen and that changes your whole career. My uncle Leibele never had a pulpit, but he was like the wedding king. I don't know if you're aware of it. He had the weddings. He just monopolized the weddings. And one of the reasons he monopolized the weddings, I think, Jack, you know the story, but Mati, you may not be aware of, he was mentored by Yossele Rosenblatt. They were very close. And he followed Yossele around. And Yossele liked my uncle very much. And when Yossele Rosenblatt got into financial trouble, he had invested into a business before the Depression. And he didn't know the business, and he lost all his money. In the 1929 collapse, he went to my uncle because he had weddings booked years in advance. And he had to go abroad to concertize to make the money. He was virtually wiped out. And many people feel that that's what really cut off his lifespan and really ultimately his demise. He was such a young man when he passed. And he gave all those weddings for the next couple of years over to my uncle. And my uncle just inherited all this weddings and this following. And ultimately, I mean, he did Shabbosim and concerts, and he for many years was in Grossinger's and the Concord and other places. But he primarily had weddings for years and years after that. So it was just a lot of circumstance that brought me as a baby Molly boy. I was just in the right place at the right time, as he was in the right place at the right time.
Basel is good to have.
It is.
You know, for those of you who are still hanging around, I don't look at the gallery view to see who's here. We have a great Father's Day gift as a bonus for you. We talked about Danny as a young man, and now we're going to hear, Francine, if you're ready, we're going to hear Danny as, how old were you, Danny, in this clip of?
8. I was 8 years old.
8 years old, singing Haveni Akirli, how precious is my son to me.
All right, I'm muting.
Thank you all for joining us.
Danny. Kimide tabibo zakarasta.